Uh,
Or stragglers.
yep, the Wranglers and Stragglers. All right, coming soon. Still undetermined, but we're thinking maybe trying to go bowling. I don't know. That'll be. It's going to be June 8th. This is on right. This one. I'm trying to make sure. But anyway, like I said, June 8th. We're kind of looking at some different places to maybe try to go bowling uh, at that time. So when I get locked in on a place, we'll look and try to figure out what would be a good time to go and meet. So just kind of keep that open, June the 8th. So anyway, we're still in our study here, the book of Obadiah. You've got your Bibles open to that. We're still looking at this vision, this transcending vision of Obadiah that God gave him. And then last week we did something kind of unusual. We got 2 points last week. So what? Oh, thanks, Brady. I appreciate that. We got 2 points covered last week in our study. So I'm not saying we will this week, but we'll see. But last week, obviously, we talked about the double cross that we've seen here in verse number 7 in Obadiah's vision, and then we talked about the destruction that came. Today, we want to kind of pick up and finish out this thought of it's a tactical vision. And how God kind of laid out exactly what it is he was going to do and how he was going to more or less do it. And verse number 9, you want to read that with us? It says, "And thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to the end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter." Of course, we see here, we're kind of calling this the dissemination of Edom. God is coming in, and he's been telling us, I know how I'm going to go about it in verse 7 with the Confederacy, the people that you thought were your friends but wasn't. And then he came in verse 8 and was talking about he's going to utterly destroy them. And now here we see how it is, through what means is God going to bring about Edom's ultimate destruction. And verse 9 says, "And thy mighty men, O Teman." Now, I kind of got to looking this up, and I would attempt to draw you a crude picture over here, and it would be extremely crude and make no sense. So, but if you kind of have an idea in your back of your Bibles, many of you have maps, and it might show a little picture of what Jerusalem looks like, or Israel looks like. Kind of down, and I would look at mine, but I don't have that. Oh, wait, here it is. I do have one. All right, cool. But most people do. I don't know. So, as you're kind of looking through there, you see the Dead Sea, and that little area right over there, kind of the map I have shows Arabia, but it shows a rather crude and small Israel in this time. But kind of right there at the bottom of the Dead Sea, kind of coming down a little bit and kind of over to the right is where Edom was. Some may have actually a picture of a map in there that may or may not show Edom. I've lost the majority of my maps in this Bible years ago. But like I said, they were right there. Teman was their stronghold in that area. And then kind of right over pretty close to the border, in one of the maps that I looked at online, was kind of where Petra was. And it was inside the nation of the territory that Edom controlled. the territory that they had. So, as we see, Teman was probably like we have when you sign up to go to the Marines. I'm going to use them as an example because I know more about the Marines because of some of the friends that I have on Facebook and family members. But the Marines, when you enlist in the Marines, you go to a place called Parris Island, and that's where they train you to become a Marine. I'm sure Ashley went somewhere specific when she went into the Air Force, San Antonio. And then the Army goes to another place, and the Navy goes to another place, and everybody, all four branches have their own specific place that they train their forces, the people that enlist. Here for Edom, that place was a place called Teman, from the best that I can figure out, which is why God brings them out. Now, some of the pictures that I've seen when I was trying to look this up, Teman was kind of just this high place, which is obviously when your primary reason for existing is defense. You want to have a high ground to defend. So therefore, they had this area that was up above everywhere else, and that's where they would train and teach their people how to fight, was in this place. That way, if someone did try to come in, they would have to try to come up, and therefore it's easier to defend a higher ground. So that was the whole purpose for Edom, having their warriors to be trained in this place called Teman. Just as our forces in the United States have their specific cities and camp names that they go to do the majority of their boot camp and their training and everything else, that's kind of what Teman was here in this, for Edom. So as we see, that's why, I was kind of wondering why he says, "Thy mighty men, O Teman." Why would God say that? Well, that's why, because that's where their warriors, their boot camp, if you will, that's where they were trained. So what happens is that as God is fixing to bring down his judgment on Edom, he's going to go through and take out the highest populated area, which was in Petra at this time, and he's going to come in there and then also come in other places to utterly destroy them, because they had quite a bit of territory. The highest populated area that they had was Petra. That would be like here in Tennessee. The most populated city is Memphis. The second one is Nashville, and sometimes those two go neck and neck with each other, just like Knoxville and Chattanooga do for the third and fourth. Then, of course, you have so many Saturdays a month. Used to be in the fall, you would have Neyland Stadium as the fifth largest city, but I think that's kind of fell by the wayside with all the remodeling and stuff that they've done and taking seats out. But like I said, that was a highly populated area, and you kind of take a strike against that area coming in. When they would get in, then here would come the forces in behind. You'd have some people in the city defending it. You'd have forces coming in. Well, then here comes the cavalry, so to speak. You ever heard that statement? Here comes the cavalry. Somebody coming in to join the fight after it's already started, and they're coming in, and here they are. They're coming into the back of the one invading, and then they start wiping them out, and then they're done. That would be like the way Teman was. The mighty men, they would be dispatched from here, and they would come in and help wipe out any attack that would arise and come Edom's way, and that's just the way they would do it. Very, very, well thought out, very well trained people that they had to come up with this type of strategy. I mean, chances are I wouldn't have ever thought to have that type of strategy, but that's how they would defend themselves. And God knew how they would defend themselves. So when God would come in, he would go in. He was going to take out Teman. That was the first place that he comes in. And like we said, it's an interesting note to think of here, that a tactical way to overthrow Edom and their stronghold in Petra at the time was to take out the mighty men. So you come in and you take out the place where all the reinforcements are, the cavalry, so to speak, the ones that would come in and join the army late, and not necessarily late like, my family has a history of being, on my dad's side, always late to the party and everything else. They would come oh hush, they would come in strategically late so as to keep any kind of, if somebody invading them could not overtake an area, then in their retreat they would meet the reinforcements coming in, and they would completely and totally wipe out. And that's how they would keep people from trying to overthrow and take them out. They were very smart, very sly when it comes to fighting. That's basically that was their. You're going all the way back to their founder, and Esau. That's what he was. He was a very skilled tactician and very skilled hunter and everything. And he took those things that he learned and kind of passed them down through generation to generation, and they just took that and built upon that to become not a overly huge world power at that time, because they were very small, but they were very big in their reputation as far as being skilled fighters. People didn't want to just go right up. I mean, you hear stories of people, when they, you see movies about people going to jail, and they're afraid of what's going to happen to them in jail. This is just movie and make believe, but this mentality is something that existed here. But they would go in, they'd want to fight the biggest guy in the cell block. Why? Because they wanted to try to establish dominance so that nobody would mess with them. And that was the same way that Edom was here. They had their training facility, they had their training area. They would use that to their advantage to establish a reputation amongst nations all around them, to where nobody would want to come in and mess with them. And a lot like with Israel, I mean, people knew that Israel was God's chosen people. They had heard how God had brought them out of Egypt. They had heard and seen the things that happened when God was bringing them into Canaan land, and how the miraculous things that happened for this people that God had, so that a lot of times, people just wouldn't just rise up willy-nilly just I think I'm going to go pick a fight with Israel today, and they go over and try to fight them. People didn't do that. If they were going to take over, try to come up and overthrow and take Israel out, it was a big deal. It wasn't just something willy-nilly, just, we ain't got nothing else better to do, let's go pick a fight with so-and-so. That wasn't the case. That was also the case with Edom. Nobody just wanted to go in and just pick a fight, just to pick a fight. They would have to have a good strategy to try to go in. Just because, like the little video we showed, the treasury and everything else, and how it was such a thriving, trade center, and money was flowing in and out, and that's always a big draw to the flesh to get that money. You go to the armored car people, like Loomis and all of those. I mean, they really go through your background. They really go to make sure you're not coming in to try to rip them off. And then they keep an eye on you and stuff, and then they check and double check and triple check a lot of things that goes on just to make sure, because that's happened in the past. People's come in, got a job, and then stole from them. So now, I mean, it's, that is always a draw. I mean, you go back to in American history back in the 20s and 30s. I mean, they would rob. Why do people want to rob a bank?
Where the money is.
It's where the money's at. That's that. But what is the draw to want to rob a bank? A need, a necessity to get a big fat payday to where you can go hide. A lot of times, what gets a lot of people in trouble in that profession, we'll say, is just the adrenaline rush. It gets to the point where they just have to keep doing it over and over and over again until they get caught. And that was the draw. So here this city is. It's got all this commerce coming and going, and money, and other countries would take their money and put it over here because of how well protected it was. And people would try to come in and take what wasn't theirs, and so they would defend that particular area well. And it's through their ability to protect themselves is how God is going to bring about their dissemination, how he's going to take them out and utterly destroy them. I kind of thought about this too. Dismantling your opponent in war is key to gaining the victory. How many of you, I'm going to throw this date out, December 7th, 1941. How many of you, by just a show of hands, know exactly what I'm talking about? December 7th, 1941.
It's the day that will live in infamy.
It was the day that Franklin Delano Roosevelt gets up before Congress and proclaims to be a day that lives in infamy. And as we can see with the younger generations coming up, its infamy has come and gone. But December 7th was when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The Japanese in World War II, that is what brought the United States into World War II, and that is what ultimately led to America fully demonstrating and fully setting ourselves as a country, up as the preeminent world power. We had technology, we had things nobody else had. Now everybody has what we once had because we've given that information to them. There's the playing field now is so level it's not even funny. But in 1947 or December 7th, 1941, I don't know where I got 47 at. Sorry about that. But in 1941, the Japanese, in a preemptive strike, the word here is preemptive, they were afraid the United States was going to get into World War II. The Japanese, because of everything going on over here on this side of the globe in Europe, they wanted that over here on the west side of the globe, and they wanted full control of everything in the Pacific. So therefore, if the biggest obstacle for you to establish your dominance in one particular part of the world is to take someone who won World War I out, you have to do it preemptively. You have to do a sneak attack. And they sent in their sneak attack, and they bombed Pearl Harbor. And it wasn't bombs like we know it today. Their bombing was actual Japanese men getting in Japanese airplanes and crashing them into the earth, into all the Navy, the ships, the airplanes, and stuff that was on land, the airstrips. They come in and they're bombing, but they would also, once they used all their bombs, they would crash their plane. They would die for their cause. And they were called kamikaze airmen. And that's where we get the name kamikaze at. You just reckless abandon, boom, go, and you're done. That was what brought America in. That was their attempt to dismantle the United States. It backfired. It didn't work. But see here, in this instance, in Obadiah here, verse number 9, God says, this is how I'm going to do it. Like I said, when it comes to things of warfare, you normally do not tip your hand at what you're going to do to your enemy unless you have complete and total superiority in whatever conflict it is you have with them. God had it all. He didn't care to let them know because they wasn't listening to him anyway. They didn't care what God had to say. They didn't believe in God. The nation of Edom, even though their brother Jacob and Israel was God's chosen people, they chose not to believe in God. They had no use for God. So therefore, when God's given them a warning, they didn't care. That's what inevitably brought about their demise. So as we see here, dismantling your opponent is the key to gaining victory. God says, I'm going to take out your mighty men in Teman. And he says, they shall be destroyed. And he did. He brought in the army, the ones he brought in to destroy them. He brought them in. They went to Teman. So when they went in to take over wherever it was that, and I'm assuming it was kind of in Petra, was where, since that's where everything else was, like Washington, D.C. is for us, United States. That's where all of our, critical thinkers, and I hate to use that term, but all the people that's in charge of our military and all that stuff is based in Washington. That would have been kind of a Petra for the nation of Edom. And that's where if you wanted to overthrow the nation of Edom, you'd have to go through Petra. So God comes in and takes out Teman. There's no more mighty men to come. They're dead. They're gone. They're history. So then when the army comes in and goes into Petra, there's nobody coming behind them so that they can sandwich them and ultimately win the victory. Now, probably the people that were, keeping Petra under lock and key, I guess what you call the police force or whatever, that would defend the city there, they didn't know they had no backup coming because they had done been defeated. Teman was already taken out. So as we see, with the mighty men out of the way, the nation has no more protection and therefore becomes an easy target for the enemy to strike. So when the enemy rolls into to Petra to go in and overthrow their government, their leaders, and take them out and basically render the nation of Edom helpless. That's typically what you do. That's like what we said a couple of weeks ago or however long ago it was. When you're going into battle, when you're going into war, your leaders, just like they have the panic rooms in Washington, D.C. to take the president down and keep him safe, and the cabinet and the vice president and Congress. These people that have to make these ultimate decisions, they have a place where they can be kept safe and sound. If somebody wanted to come in and overthrow the United States, that's going to be the place they go to. Just like, for years, back when after Pearl Harbor and the United States developed the technology for the atomic bomb, there's a little place just 30 miles away from here called Oak Ridge, which is where they came up with all of that stuff. And they enriched everything, and they produced the 2 bombs that was dropped in Japan to end World War II. You know, that once other countries started developing some of the technology that we had, they had missiles directed towards over here in the Cold War. The Cold War happened in the 60s over Cuba, down in down below Miami, down in the Caribbean. You know, other places where countries were sending down forces and putting them at Cuba because that's the most strategic place to kind of come in and try to attack America. And then they had missiles and stuff aimed. If World War III was to break out, where are you going to, if all of our technology and development to end a nuclear war is in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where are you going to try to take out to keep something from coming back at you? That's our strategic area, or was. Now they've spread it out. It's in other parts of the country. But at that time, in the Cold War, it was Oak Ridge. So if somebody wanted to try to take out the United States, they had to take out Oak Ridge first. Which
it was going to get blown up by default.
Exactly. We were, we were going to be just casualties of Oak Ridge being taken out because it's right next door to us. You know, this whole area right here would have looked like the pictures. You can go online today and look up and see what happened to Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Of course, I always mispronounce it on purpose, just as a joke, call it Hiroshima, but it's Hiroshima. But like I said, you can find those pictures and see what something that was just right over here that people here didn't know about. That was always called the Manhattan Project. That was the project name that they had. We know all this now because, everything's free information. Has been declassified because everybody has it. There's no need to keep it secret. But World War III, and if you listen today, you'll hear people talking about, this could be the beginning of World War III. And World War III would not be your traditional, guns and missiles and stuff. It's going to be nuclear. Because you're going to have to try to come up with one better than your enemy to try to squash them. And that's only going to come through nuclear. So as we see, that's with the reinforcements not coming to the aid, the Mount of Esau will be completely cut off, which is where Petra was and still is. It's not called Edom anymore, but the Mount of Esau will be completely cut off, and end by tremendous slaughter. So they're going in. The way's already paved for this overthrowing army. They've done took out Teman. Now they're going in to the place where they need to go in and find the leaders of this nation to take them out, so the overthrow of them becomes that much easier. Just like I said, when it comes to use back in the Cold War, you take out Oak Ridge, you take out our opportunity to strike back in a nuclear war. So that's why that was a strategic point for our enemies globally to take out. So as we see, that's how you do it. That's how wars are won. The key to remember here is what God says He will do. He will do. It's kind of, we're talking all this kind of craziness about wars and nuclear and this and that and things of old and what's possibly coming, or is always on the thread of happening. I'm 49 years old, and I've heard, everybody talking about what, Destiny? I don't know. I guess 49 years old is, oh, okay. All I know is you started laughing. But anyway, when it comes down to it, at 49 years old, I've heard that my whole life, practically. World War III. When's World War III going to break out? That's just something we have to live with, learn to live with, and be ready to have happen. I mean, everybody said that, if Russia was to go nuclear on the Ukraine, using something of more recent time frame here, if Russia was to go nuclear on the Ukraine and try to take them out, then that obviously is going to bring in all the other nuclear powered countries in this world, nations in this world, to put an end to that. And that would be
valuable. If you have something valuable, you don't need it, but you want it.
Yeah, but
if
so
they had something that Russia wanted, they wouldn't have needed it.
Right. So like I said, but everybody that was at one point in time was, they're going to go nuclear. Russia's threatening to go nuclear. If somebody joins this fight between them and the Ukraine, then they're going to go nuclear. And that they were threatening that to keep other people from joining into the war, because they were trying to take back a territory that used to be part of Russia years and years and years ago, several decades ago. So here we see they're threatening, they're wanting to take this back over because of what they have. It's strategic to Russia to have control of this area, and they're wanting it. The Ukrainians don't want to go back to Russia, and they're fighting. We're funding all this stuff as taxpayers and everything, and they're still over there fighting. But the talk of nuclear has kind of calmed down. Russia's not really threatening like they was, when this war first started, or when their war first started. But that's just kind of the way it is. They're when it comes to what God says He's going to do it. Russia comes in. They're saying they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and they're not, because they can't afford to do X, Y, and Z because of what's going to happen if they did. God doesn't have that. He doesn't have that worry, and I hate to use the word worry because God doesn't worry about nothing. Do what?
Inhibition.
Yes, that's a good word. He doesn't have that inhibition. It doesn't bother him. He can just take it out, take this nation out. He's got reason, and He's going to do it, and that's what He did. So as we see, the key to what God says He'll do, it doesn't matter how tactically, say that word fast, sound you can be or think you are. God will bring to pass what He said He will do, and to not do so would diminish who God is. Had God not, once God put this vision to Obadiah, and Obadiah put it out there and went and told what God had told him, and then recorded it for us to be able to look back on. If God did not take Edom out after saying, I'm going to do this, then it would have made God a liar. It would have put a black eye, so to speak, on God. And it would diminish who God is. So we know God is, He's God. He's what He says goes, and all this stuff. But what He said He was going to do, He's going to do. It doesn't matter what Edom tried to do to stop it, or to try to put up any resistance to it. When God says He's going to do something, you're not stopping Him. He's going to bring to pass what He said He was going to do. And in doing so, He is bringing about, He is diminishing or disseminating this nation of Israel. Or not Israel, but Edom. He's completely taken them out. Now,
kind of like Baal then, or how God against Baal, and obviously God did what He said He was going to do, and Baal couldn't do anything.
Yeah, through on the mountain. But like I said, when it comes down to that, God brought about utter dissemination. He completely and totally took out any remnant of a nation of Israel. Now, of Edom. Now, as we know, there is always a small remnant that gets out. There's always going to be that, but that remnant for Edom was so small and so sparse that, and they were so whipped, so to speak, that the ones that did survive, the ones that did get away, they just chose to live their life kind of on the down low and just kind of let things be. They didn't try to come back in. Now, if you follow the nation of Israel, you see the different types of captivities that God brought in judgment against the nation of Israel. There was always that remnant that was left behind, and that is where, from that remnant, that is where the nation of Israel would always come back from. When they would come out of captivity, they would come back and join that remnant, and they would rebuild and get stronger, because at this time they were fully seeking the Lord. They were living for the Lord and everything else and doing what they were supposed to, and God blessed them, strengthened them, and they flourished till they got to the point to where they no longer needed God, and then God would bring judgment back on them. So, like I said, but with Edom, he so destroyed any mindset of, we can come back from this. This is nothing. It's just a minor setback. No, when God brought this dissemination to the nation of Edom, it broke their will. The remnant just went on and lived out their life and sparsely, and they just kind of existed, and that was it. There was no more nation. There was no more forces. There was no more Edom. They just kind of just existed. The remnant just kind of existed and kind of went its way. So God did bring about what he said, did away with them. But he did away with them even to the ones that escaped and got away, that they just didn't even want to bother trying to regroup, reband, and come back. They just said, we're not going through that again. So like we said, God's tactical vision, part of this vision, there in the dissemination of Edom. All right, you're free to go. We'll look at something else next week.